following is a conversation. It has the features of any conversation, such as imperfectly expressed thoughts, ill-considered opinions, and the notions of several sleep-deprived brains. Try not to get your stethoscope in a twist about it.
Everyone is talking about how AI will replace office workers, but does capitalism pretty much guarantee it'll replace docs too? We'll talk about that, but first, I've been noticing something when I edit the video version of this podcast, which is that we all tend to have blank expressions because we're listening, we're thinking,
Yes.
So I thought let's try some expressions today, and
This is your cold open idea.
this is my cold open. This is the cold open idea that you have at 9 a.m. on podcast day.
Solid.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Ready? You guys in the studio can do this. It'll be better. You guys on the Zoom. Jeff, you have to participate too.
Yeah. We never make the special guests.
Dr. Carmody, I'm not going to force you to
don't participate
do
in this
anything.
Nonsense.
All right, here we go. Expression number 1. I just saw Donald Trump in the health and beauty section at Target. Make the expression. Okay. Oh, okay. Wow.
What do you want me to say? What do you want me to do?
Okay. I'm just saying, you do whatever you want. Taryn didn't make any expression.
I did.
You did?
Yeah,
She did.
I was like,
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oops, I dropped your baby on the floor. Perfect. I honored the shelf exam.
That was specifically for you.
That was for you.
I for anyone who doesn't want to go to the YouTube, everyone's faces was just confused, which I found charming.
What you just said about vaccines made me dumber. Okay. Thank you.
I had to make that face a lot in the last month.
Yeah. I've made that face a lot.
At last, the laxative has worked. No.
Hey, you asked, you
I was
received.
imagining relief, but
I was just like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
you know who does awesome facial expressions in the podcast?
Who?
Guess.
Me.
No. Well, maybe, but I was thinking of Fallon.
Yes.
Mm.
She has such an expressive face. I love her.
I miss my Fallon.
Yeah.
Meandering in the margins of medicine, it's the Shortcoat Podcast.
Weird news,
Fresh views
helpful clues, and interviews.
by students for students.
Subscribe to our weekly show at theshortcoat.com.
Welcome back to the Shortcoat Podcast, the show that gives you an inside look at medical school from the students drinking from that fire hose. It's a production of the University of Iowa Carver College of Medicine. I'm Dave Etler. With me today in the SCP studio, say hello to M1 Sarah Lohenberg.
Ayo.
M2 Taryn O'Brien is here.
Howdy do. M2 for only a few
Just
more
a few
hours.
bit
Oh
more.
my God.
MD PhD student Miranda Skeen is here.
Howdy, howdy.
And M3 Jeff Goddard joins us from the internet.
Happy to be here.
But what if I told you there was somebody else here? Would you be surprised? Well, it's true. We've got the sheriff of sodium himself, Dr. Brian Carmody, is a pediatric nephrologist, blogger, YouTuber, and watchful commentator on all things medicine and med ed. And he's returned to the Shortcoat today. Dr. Carmody, welcome back to the Shortcoat.
Thank you for inviting me back.
Of course.
I think I need to give this disclaimer now. I had heard of the sheriff of sodium via Reddit, and I was like, oh, this is kind of like a bigwig in medical commentary. And I didn't realize until this morning, or actually, no, yesterday when Dave gave us our reminder email, I'm like, wait a minute. Is this that sheriff of sodium? Wait a minute.
Are there more?
And my world kind of collided. I'm like, I didn't know what I signed up for here.
Are you starstruck?
A little bit.
This is what
Did
happened.
you get him mixed up with some sheriffs of other elements?
I don't know where my
I
mind was for the last week, to be
But I was
entirely
reading
honest.
the sheriff of calcium. Oh well.
Uh,
The Commodore of calcium. Damn it.
Right there. It was
right there.
Taryn's been focusing on other things. I'm just honored that she's here today.
Parole officer of potassium.
Yeah. Shortcoats. If you hear something today that makes your brain do a little dance, gives you a wild idea, burning question, or a spicy take you wanna share with us, head to theshortcoats.com/tell us and spill it. We want your weird, your wonderful, your is this a thing stuff, and it'll help make the show more you than me. And honestly, that's the dream. If you're able and feeling generous, help me skip any awkward dean conversations about money and hit that orange donate button at theshortcoat.com. That's what David recently did. Thank you.
Hell yeah, David.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Thanks.
Appreciate that. All right. Dr. Carmody, we asked you to come talk with us today because you recently released a rather sobering look at whether AI will replace doctors. And I guess we know what your basic conclusions are because the title is, yes, doctors, AI will replace you.
That's very good. Put the thesis statement first.
Yeah. The Shortcoats, I'll put a link in the show notes to that video. But let's get into it. Why are you feeling so down on physicians' ability to resist AI replacement?
Well, I guess I should clarify. I put out 2 videos, and both of them were deeply unpopular in certain quarters. So,
I feel like unpopular sometimes means that you're making a good point.
Yes.
Well, I to be honest, I think that's what a lot of the negative response is about. It's hard to become a doctor. You invest years. You spend untold toil and sweat and tears to acquire all these skills, and the idea that those skills could be so easily replaced by something else, it is sort of offensive.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, my basic argument, it sort of hinges on 3 premises, and you can tell me if you disagree with any of these 3 things. But I think if you don't, you're going to reach the same conclusion that I have. So point number 1 is that we now have computers that are capable of replacing many doctor decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean some kind of future, computer that doesn't exist yet, that's some pie in the sky dream. I'm talking about the stuff we have right now is capable of replacing a certain amount of doctor work. So that's point number 1. So given that is the case, the companies who make this technology, they have an incentive to replace doctors. And that incentive is financial and it's strong. And yes, these companies could make apps that make doctors' work easier, but that's not really as lucrative of a financial goal as simply replacing the physicians and taking the physicians' professional fees. That would be orders of magnitude more money available, by doing that. So point number 2 is there's an incentive for companies to replace physicians. And then my point number 3 is that, because we all have incentives. Physicians certainly have incentives to not be replaced by AI. So when people's incentives collide, how do we predict who's going to win? And I think that my 3rd point is that these corporations, they have the finances and the political connections and the will to achieve their objectives. So in the long run, they will. And actually, I think it'll be, not that long that we're going to start to see this happen. So yeah, that's how I see it. And to be honest, I guess that's how I've seen it for a while. And so, the first video in particular was spawned by just sort of reaching my limit with sort of what I see as sort of superficial and silly arguments against it. Against this occurring. And, so that's why I made the video, and it's generated a lot of discussion. It's not my normal kind of stuff, but yeah, that's sort of how I got here, or back here, I guess.
So if you don't mind, I guess, I have two things that I'll push back on, really only slightly. Just to be upfront about it, I agree with you. 100%. In fact, I was relieved when I saw your first video to have somebody further along in their training who has a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for?
Just experience.
prestige in the field, a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit more credibility in the
Yeah.
field, being able to say something that seemed pretty obvious to me over the last several years was that this is the future because of the financial incentives. So here are my two pushbacks. The first one is your argument that the players have significant influence over the the regulatory or the industry enough, the policy side of things to force their will in order to replace physicians, right? I might push back and say that I don't know that there has been a more successful lobbying organization in this country over the last 100 years than physicians. Like the state medical societies and the AMA have made physicians from, your typical self-employed kind of sole proprietorship 100 years ago to being the surest way in this country to becoming wealthy. Not the easiest. By no stretch of the imagination am I saying that medical school is easy. It's not even cheap, but it is the surest way, the guaranteed way of becoming wealthy in this country. The majority of people in this country that are in the top 10% of income earners are physicians. Like we dominate the upper class of the society, and we have done it by gatekeeping and by lobbying. We've carved out a niche and we said nobody else is allowed, right? And that's kind of been the whole thing with fighting off the mid levels, which is, I don't know, it seems like a losing battle, but that's the battle that we're having. I don't know that I'm 100% on board saying that the doctors will lose that fight, and if nothing else, they will certainly prolong that fight from a policy standpoint, from a legislative standpoint, of trying to make sure that they hold on to their ground that they have so diligently fought for the last 100 years. That would be the first question, or the first thing that I might push back on. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I guess I would vigorously disagree. I agree with the historical perspective here. I mean, it is true, and I mean, there's books written on the subject of how the American Medical Association, I mean, used to be, I mean, as you indicated, a very effective political lobby. But I think those days, I mean, those days are 80 years ago. When AMA was leading the push against, what socialized medicine. And I mean, certainly you still hear that stuff now, but the AMA itself has transformed from an organization that was really dependent on its membership dues and into an organization that really its business model at this point is selling physician information. And by the biggest part of it is the CPT codes, that are used for billing. They license those codes. And so I think that's their focus.
Yeah.
At the same time, you have a physician workforce that, back in the old days, I mean, it was doctors finishing medical school and hanging out a shingle and, fighting for themselves. Now, the majority of physicians are employed, and they're employed by corporations that have their own incentives, and I think aren't going to see, I mean, physicians are just one cog in their machine. And they don't have, the incentive, the boards of these giant corporations. They don't have the physicians' interests at heart. They have other priorities. The physicians are simply just one part of the operation that's, churning the wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Jeff. I do kind of want to say this because I was thinking about what I wanted to say on this podcast, and I might restate a lot of what you just said, Dr. Carmody, and I apologize for that. But I think there is...
She needs to say it.
I need to say this. Well, I absolutely agree with your comments about the AMA in terms of like as a sort of organization to protect physicians from this. I don't see them being that effective of a barrier. So I was vigorously shaking my head. If you're not on YouTube, you didn't see that. But also I do think that there's an issue when it comes to things like, will doctors be replaced by AI, where doctors don't tend to, and I'll be just to get your take on this. They don't tend to visualize themselves as employees. They tend to visualize themselves more as like, I don't know, almost like what you were saying earlier, like a class, almost like this sort of like strata of society. And maybe that just comes from the fact that doctors are seen as authorities and that they lead healthcare teams. But at the end of the day, like if you are a physician employed at a hospital system, which a lot of them are, and even if you are like in business for yourself, you're clinic may still be part of a larger organization, you are an employee. And as an employee, you cost money. And if you can be replaced by something that costs less money without significant blowback, then you will be.
Right.
Like that is, I think there's a little connection there that physicians sometimes don't make because they don't view themselves as employees in the same way that, for example, like factory workers or like office workers would.
I will say that almost half of physicians are currently, just under half of physicians currently are employed by another organization. That's expected to change because much younger doctors are more likely to be employed. But I think that those numbers are also skewed when you have things like, physician groups, so if you go to your local emergency department, odds are that's a contracted group of emergency medicine physicians. They're not technically employed by the hospital. They just, use the hospital. So it's the data is a little skewed on that because it's a kind of a more unique business model.
Yeah, but sometimes it's like how much control does that actually give? Like it's not like they can find another, like it's not like they can build another hospital,
Well, yeah, and that was kind of my point. Is like
it's the same
you'll
thing
see
fired.
The data will show technically self-employed, but to your point, like they don't have an emergency department, and the hospital has every incentive to try to drive down those costs with that relationship with that contracted group.
Yeah, precisely.
My second point was my brother-in-law is currently having a great time with the FDA trying to get a diagnostic AI test approved. This isn't a large language model. This is just for diagnostic imaging for ophthalmology. And he's working with an ophthalmologist that actually is emeritus from the University of Iowa. So I get a nice double touch with this organization. And the conversation, one of the big conversations that we had this morning talking about this topic was that one of the concerns is if you can say this diagnostic test takes like a minute to do, like, just scan the eyeball and boom, you're done. There is a huge incentive to not reimburse significantly. Obviously, like the point is to drive down costs, right? One would hope. But if you can convince the gods of Medicare to say, I'm just going to pay you less because this actually doesn't cost you that much to do, there's a huge barrier of entry for AI companies because it costs money to train these AI programs. It costs, there's overhead, there's office staff, there's payroll. They also want to make a profit. And if we're saying, oh, it only takes you a minute instead of what we would pay the doctor to do the exact same diagnostic physical exam, we're just going to pay you like 99 cents because you can just like take a picture and that's it. That becomes a different financial barrier. So it kind of like, I guess I'm seeing it as a balance between, we know that we're paying doctors too much, but how much can we really undercut the AI so that we're not having to pay those companies that much either? And how much is that going to be a deterrent for these people that are coming into that space from a business standpoint? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I guess a couple of things I would say. So I think the fundamental analysis there is right. I mean, if you make it less rewarding to replace physician work or more expensive to replace physician work, then the value proposition is not there for the companies. I mean, I think that principle is correct. I'm not so sure that will apply. I think one thing that's going to happen, which I alluded to in the video, is that I think many people have a lot of faith that our sort of current regulatory processes will keep out AI. I mean, a frequent objection that I get, which I think is sort of largely silly, is oh well, they're going to have studies that show that the computer can do such and such better than I can do it. Mm-hmm. Bull. They don't have to have that. And the reason why is I think any company that pursues a sort of standard regulatory approach is foolish. I mean, maybe for certain niche applications of things, yeah, that's fine. You pursue it as a medical device. But really, I think what we're going to be looking at is a political process. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you highlighted before, Jeff. I mean, the stuff with mid-levels. I mean, it's not like there was a study that showed that mid-levels care, met or exceeded physician care. It was a political process. There were patients who needed care. There were politicians who were sympathetic to that argument. There was a desire to get people the care that they need. And so you license other people to do it. It wasn't an evidence-based, beard stroking argument at the FDA about this. It's in the state houses and in the streets and in living rooms. And I think the same political process is going to occur here, because for the same reason. I mean, I highlighted in the video, I think that the easiest domino to tip over is primary care. And, some people got upset with me and said, oh, that's because you don't know what primary care physicians do. It's not about what primary care physicians do. It's about the fact that there's an unmet need. There are communities that suffer, where patients suffer for lack of a primary care physician. And politicians are very sympathetic to that argument. And you can train more doctors, and they continue to not want to work in those places for reasons that are obvious. And I mean, I guess we could explore them here, but probably we need not to. Doctors stack up in places where other doctors are, and the underserved remain underserved. So there's a compelling argument to make to say, well, we could help many of these people by giving them an AI chatbot doctor to, treat their standard hypertension, or diabetes. We'll make them live longer and better. These patients will benefit from this. All you have to do is just give us a regulatory pathway that, protects us reasonably from being sued and provides a reasonable income stream. And guess what? We'll lower your state Medicaid costs. Our company will step in. We'll take care of your Medicaid patients with chatbots. And now the state Medicare program benefits, and, the patients benefit, and we benefit. So what do you think, Mr. Politician? And a law will be written. That's what I think is going to happen. But I think your point about, could the value proposition change? Yeah, that could, and that would change the calculus. I mean, in general, I think that's true.
Yeah. All right. Last comment, and then I'm going to open the floor to everybody else. Sorry, everybody. I've been thinking about this quite a bit.
Jeff is the producer. We need to give him his time.
Oh, fine. We'll let the men talk. That's okay.
Oh, wow.
Sorry. I guess, yeah. So I've talked to several people in the AI space, AI medicine space, mostly in the diagnostic side of things, that are currently fighting with the FDA. I would say if somebody feels like the FDA is, quote unquote, protecting doctors from AI right now, it is more out of incompetence than it is out of altruism. They simply just don't understand the technology. There has been, and I mean, I don't want to get too political, but obviously there's been, staff shortages recently. So even if somebody did understand it, they don't understand it now. So I think that we've got several years before the FDA is ready to really handle these companies. But that's just, that's one of the three pillars that somebody would have to overcome, right? So you've got to get FDA approval. You've got to get the legislators on board, state legislators, because that's how in our federated society we've decided that medicine should be handled. And then you've got to get the payers on board. And I agree with you. I think it's a pretty easy argument to make to the legislators and the payers, not from the value add, but from the access to care standpoint, which frankly, I mean, that's something that I'm looking forward to. It sounds like I've been pushing back because I want to steel man the argument, because I agree with you. I think that in the long run, I don't even care if the AI is, let's say, 80 or 75% as good as a physician. Anything is better than 0% physician in rural Iowa, where a lot of our patients are coming from.
Yeah, right.
I think I have a point that I feel very strongly about, that I think a lot of these discussions around AI often misses, because yes, the points that both of you have made are correct. And I do see things kind of moving in that way. But a lot of times we quickly fall into this pit of forgetting about who this care is for and forgetting about the patient role. Because the reality is yes, a lot of times people just want a quick solution, or for example, me, a medical student, I'm busy. Did I want to take time out of my day for an emergency dentist appointment yesterday to prescribe me the antibiotics I knew I needed? No. Could a chatbot had it been oh, yep, you check all these boxes, here's an antibiotic. But the reality would be patients probably won't want that. I don't want that. I don't want a bot to be the one determining that. If I have a medical issue or have my medical care, we're just kind of there's still going to be an element where AI still has that role. But I think the level to which it ends up invading and how pervasive it is in medicine is going to hinge on population acceptance and population willingness for that to be a thing. Because at least in Iowa, just knowing our Iowan populations, like if I told them, oh yeah, we have this bot, it'll give you your medication, I think maybe 1 out of every 50 patients would be okay with that and wouldn't throw a fit. And so I think that's going to be one of the bigger factors that ends up determining both the extent and the rate at which AI invades and kind of affects how we practice medicine.
I don't know. I worry about the convenience factor of it
Yeah,
all.
I was going to say, I both agree and disagree, where I think if you phrased it like, hey, I have a robot that is going to give you your antibiotic, yeah, that's like going to be a negative association. But if you phrase it as like, hey, I don't have availability today, but if you like consult like the, AI computer and you can get your antibiotics today, because the AI computer can handle a lot more patients than a human physician can, and will basically provide the same care. I do think there will be some pushback, but I think it's going to be mostly from like older generations and people who like just like having conversations. If someone is just like I just need an antibiotic or I just need my refill, I don't think they're going to mind, because the convenience factor is going to outweigh that. And I know, Dr. Carmody, I think this is one thing you discussed in your video, so I do want to turn the floor back to you. But yeah.
Well, I think you hit the so I agree with the observation. I mean, patients prefer human doctors. At least current patients, they prefer human doctors. The thing is, they prefer human doctors when we assume that the cost and the convenience are the same. Then I think everybody's maybe has a strong preference for a human doctor. But when the alternative is you call your PCP and they say, sure, we'll see you in 6 months, how good does the chatbot look? And even more to the point, the cost. I mean, what if your copay is $100, to see a human doctor and it's free to see the chatbot? I mean, how bad off are you? I mean, do you really think the chatbot's not going to get you where you need to go? I mean, people will have distrust, but money talks. So I think that and it's easy to build in those monetary incentives to steer people toward the chatbots. I mean, I think that probably, if they aren't working on it now, I've got to think that insurance companies very soon, if they haven't already, been in this space, they're going to be doing that, because what better way is it to control your costs than with an AI that you control? Like before you go to the ED, use our chatbot. Before you go to urgent care, use our chatbot. Or actually we've determined that you don't even need to go, and our chatbot's going to prescribe this because now it's got prescriptive authority that we fought for, in the legislature.
Yeah.
I think of the typical interaction I have with my healthcare providers, which is, sort of, I'm fortunate enough to be fairly healthy. Well, anyway, fairly healthy,
open up the can of worms.
Fairly healthy. Usually what I need from my physician is I need a refill.
Mm-hmm.
Like my prescription is run on this medication that I've taken for 20 years has run out, and I need a refill.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of, there's not a genius level interaction that needs to occur for that situation. And there's probably many situations in medicine like that. I think one of the ones you pointed out in your video was, you can't come in with high blood pressure, we're going to give you a statin.
Yeah.
Well, or whatever. I just made some shit up there. We're going to give you a drug.
Dave is not the healthcare
I'm not a doctor. That was statin is not
right. For high cholesterol.
Yeah, shut up.
Oh, okay. Telling the woman to shut up. Okay.
Never contradict me again.
You're too easy.
Anyway, that's what I had to say.
Yeah, and there's also, to this point, not to brag on this point, but I think there's another thing that's a little bit missing, which is right now the patient population skews older, skews like people that did not grow up with a lot of technology. As time evolves, we're going to see a lot more people who are in their like teens and 20s and even early 30s now who like have started to rely a lot on chatbots to that's their Google search now. That's how they make their grocery list. It writes their essays for them. It writes their emails for them. So like there's going to
even
be
access their therapists.
Yeah, it can be a bad therapist, but
yeah,
yes,
but it doesn't matter. Like
people are using it for a lot of more things. So I think there is, as that current population ages, they're going to be much more open to this kind of development and technology than like the current patient population is. So I do think you're right in terms of the patient population currently, but maybe not in like 15 or 20 years.
We talked a little bit about primary care being one of the areas that you see as vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the other one that gets a lot of attention is, anything that requires, sort of visual analysis. Things like derm and path and radiology. You hear a lot about radiologists,
Empath.
And
impacted by this.
And path, not empath. Empaths
yes, thank you.
Also probably be replaced by AI, but that's a different conversation.
Are there physicians that can relax for now?
Well, my take is, one of the controversial parts of the video is just sort of an off the cuff assessment of, specialties that I think are more or less resistant to AI replacement. And that got everybody's specialty mad because, like I say, nobody wants to think they're going to be replaced. But to me, it comes down to two things. It comes down to, number one, what tasks can AI do right now? Certain tasks it can do a little bit better than others. And then number two, what tasks will society allow AI to do? Without supervision, what will it just say? Turn the bot loose and let them do. So, you can imagine there's sort of a spectrum of things, pure medical decision making, pure medical knowledge where, you have objective data and stuff. I mean, a bot can do that now, Dave, like you said, a lot of medical decisions, to be truthful, they're just not that hard. A bot can do those right now. Your blood pressure's up. Let's get you on a medicine. And actually, the bot may do a better job because, when I'm in clinic, I'm kind of, I'm busy. I've got other patients to see to. Maybe I don't give the best nutritional counseling every single visit, or link to resources or screen for other things. The bot's got all the time in the world that can do those things. So, there are certain tasks that AI can do right now. On the other hand, society's going to have a lot of, actually, let's do something they can't do as well. Certain things on exam, like you said, something that you can take a picture of. Well, that's very ripe for machine learning. Reading films, looking at rashes, things that you can get on a screen. AI can do that stuff right now. Something that's a little bit more subtle. I don't know, doing a knee exam like an orthopedic surgeon would do with different maneuvers to try to, really carefully localize the site of your pain. It's hard to imagine a bot doing that. That's something that takes, experience and judgment, and there's a certain subtlety involved. The bot can't do that, right? So, and then, like I say, there's certain things that are sort of low stakes that, maybe certain pathology things. I don't know. Maybe you look at a peripheral smear or something. A bot, society might allow that to occur right now. Would society allow the bot independently to make a diagnosis of cancer on someone's tissue? I don't know. That seems like something that collectively we might have more squeamishness about and put up guardrails against, to say before a bot tells somebody we got cancer, it's got to go and be reviewed by the pathologist. We wouldn't just turn loose the bot, with its machine learning to do that. So I think those are the two things to think about. And when you think about the work that composes a given physician's day, some physicians have work that, and it doesn't mean they're lesser physicians or less smart or less well-trained or anything else, which I think some people gets under their skin because they think if I'm replaceable, it must mean that I'm less of a doctor. It's not that. It's just that certain things are more in the wheelhouse of AI, and certain things have stakes and processes that society is going to be more willing to tolerate a machine doing them alone. And certain specialties are less. So, I see things like, orthopedics being probably about the most resistant. And on the other end of the spectrum, I think a lot of primary care, it's not that it's simple or anything, but a lot of the medical decision-making is relatively lower stakes and, could be done. And moreover, there's a winning political argument to do it.
While we're kind of on the topic of, how do you deal with this encroach of AI? And one answer could be like get into a specialty that has greater resistance against the encroach of AI. I'm curious how you would potentially. When I was thinking about this episode, I was thinking a lot about the actually the SAG and the writers' strike that ended in Hollywood a couple years ago, and about how that a major reason for that was like, you know, production companies were starting to use AI to replace writing and animating work. And so that was part of the, you know, negotiations was like employers cannot use AI to write scripts. Like that is part of the negotiation. And I'm wondering, because obviously physician unions are not common, despite there are a lot of physicians that could unionize. And I'm curious if you think that same model could work if we start like thinking about physicians more as employees and more as like collective employees, if you think that could be one way to combat some of this stuff. Like, for example, you know, you can use AI to screen patients, but not to like do the visits or do the billing, for example, like something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. The idea of unions, I think, is one potentially very realistic strategy to limit AI encroachment.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, other unions have used that very effectively. I guess just sort of by way of background, I'm from Virginia. I grew up in the southwestern corner of Virginia, out where Kentucky and West Virginia and Virginia meet. It's, you know, coal country. So you know, when my parents moved there, it was a coal boom time, and then that sort of died out, you know, throughout my adolescence. And you know, obviously, I don't live there anymore, but. You know, the United Mine Workers was a very powerful union organization back in the day. You know, their leader, you know, John L. Lewis, you probably read about in history books. One thing that he did, though, was, you know, to get higher wages and better working conditions, he said that the union would stand down on automation.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the long run, that led to most coal miners losing their jobs.
Yeah.
Now, nowadays, I live out on the coast. I live out in, you know, Hampton Roads area of Virginia, where one of the big industries is the ports. You may have remembered a couple of years ago, you know, there was a short, you know, dock workers strike, mm-hmm. where the dock workers union has so far held a firm stand that they will not allow automation. Yeah. And so far they've held to that and they've kept their jobs. But you can see, and in the example that you mentioned, this is the kind of thing that unions do. Now, will society tolerate that? Will physicians do it? I mean, I think part of the problem with getting physicians to do anything is that many physicians simply don't think this will occur. They simply do not think that they can be replaced. And, you know, again, I beg to differ.
Yeah, 100%.
I think so. One, and this is something you alluded to in your YouTube episode, but it's because it'll be slow that it'll be harder for physicians to see it coming, right? Mm-hmm. With the dock workers, it's like I have to come in and just install this machine to do your job in one
fell the boxes
swoop,
and move them.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
But in medicine, it's going to be you know this particular modality or this particular procedure, this particular diagnostic, and even then only in a few specialties, and it'll be a slow, insidious event, right? As opposed to all coming all at once. So I think that'll come with it. I guess, so for my background, I'm on the other side of the Kentucky border. I grew up in coal country in Kentucky, and it's a mess over there. Access to care is a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do we have an ethical obligation to not get in the way?
Yeah.
So
right.
I always talk about the Luddites, and I'm very sympathetic. So everybody remembers that the Luddites were factory workers in textiles who were upset that machines were coming in and essentially replacing them. And they tried to burn down the factory because they didn't want to lose their work. And the government stepped in and said, you can't do that, right? They quashed the rebellion. Those Luddites never recovered economically in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. But society as a whole improved significantly. Productivity increased significantly for all of society. And that's a huge trade-off. And that really does suck for those Luddites, right? It sucks for the coal miners, who society has benefited from automation to the detriment of these local individuals. Do we have an ethical obligation to say we're going to have to take this hit a little bit so that society as a whole can improve, and recognizing, yes, it is a trade-off. Yes, it is going to hurt us financially, but also, I mean, I don't know, maybe some doctors can afford to have one less boat. I don't want to be too grumpy about that, but
yeah.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I mean, mm-hmm. How can, you know, if you've got patients who aren't receiving care and now they're going to receive care with the bot, I mean, can you really stand in the way of that? I mean, you can argue for a different proposal that would get those people care, but you can't simply say, no, we want doctors to practice in affluent suburbs. We don't care. We're not going to make any explicit policy that is going to help people, get care in Appalachia or rural Iowa or wherever it needs doctors. I don't think that is ethical. I mean, there are people who would benefit, and to stand in the way of that, it's not right. It's not what we're here to do.
Yeah. It's like this is almost the heartbreaking part of some of these discussions for me, is that if we, and I apologize, I'm going to get like philosophical and,
Oh God, here we go.
I'm going to be impractical for a second. I do apologize for that. If we lived in like a society and a culture that like had a strong value on like protecting everyone's right to live comfortably, I feel like we would not see this kind of thing as a threat. Like, I think if physicians knew that like, okay, my like value to my community is not going to be impacted by this. This is going to be something that's going to expand my ability to provide care. I don't think anyone would care. The problem is when you talk about these incentives, the incentive is not, oh, let's make our physicians more efficient and help them with their like burnout and stress. It's let's employ fewer physicians. And that's kind of the heartbreaking part, is that you can imagine a world in which this development is fine and even welcomed, but that's not where we are. The incentive is not to improve the physicians' lives and the lives of the patients. The incentive is to like
make money.
Precisely.
I was going to say, that's like exactly what I think. It's like, from my point of view, I'm like, think about all the people that we could serve with something like this, or like how great this could be. But I don't own a business. So on the other side, there's also other people in this world who are like, let's use this, to make money, to save money, that kind of stuff. I do think that's a huge question, because it's like, where is it good enough, but not, allowing people to take advantage of it? Because I think it could be really good, but it could also equally be really bad.
Yeah. And same thing with automation. If when you automated work, if those people were still kept their positions, but just had to do much less backbreaking toil, no one would mind. But the problem is, like, once you have automation, you can fire your workers, and then they do that. And that's where the problem is.
I want to talk about what things medical students like yourselves and pre-meds should be, thinking about preparing themselves for this.
Unionize.
Okay.
Sorry.
We did talk about unions.
Destroy capitalism.
I know. I'm an organizer. I'm sorry.
Board
it's
by
in my
board.
blood.
It's
I
all
literally
right.
I literally organized the grad student union here. I'm so sorry. But
Well, we got to.
I guess I want to push back a little bit on that, because like, okay, so there's this famous, I want to say soul quote. It could be one of the other Chicago guys. I don't know, but he like famously went to China, and they were using shovels to dig a canal. And he asked, "Why are you using shovels? Why aren't you using like, an excavator?" And they said, "Well, this is a jobs project." And he's like, "Well, if it's for jobs, why aren't you giving them spoons?" The purpose of medicine is not to employ physicians. Like, I don't care about physician jobs. I care about access to health. I care about access to health care. I care that our patients are well. As somebody who's going into this field and is hoping to maybe pay off these student loans someday, I totally understand the idea that I want to make a living. But the purpose of the hospital is not to employ doctors and nurses. The purpose of the hospital is to take care of patients. And if AI is going to do that better, I'm going to have to take the L, because my job is to make sure they are well, not to make sure that I'm getting, a six-figure pay increase or whatever.
Yeah.
So I get the idea that like we live in a society that like values labor as like some kind of moral imperative, that like being employed is a moral good in and of itself, and like your value is tied to whether or not you have that job. I get that. I 100% understand that. I understand that historically, physician specialties that have lost prestige because their job has gotten easier, either because of diagnostic capabilities or because of machines or whatever, whenever the prestige goes down, those doctors are less satisfied with their work, even if their pay is relatively the same, right? I get that we want to feel like we have prestige in our community. That's a huge part of being a social species, is where is our standing in the community. But like, so, I don't know, like, it isn't about us. Like, this is bigger than us. This is about what's best for the patient. And so I'm trying to be protective of us as a profession, but also recognizing that I am just the whole reason why we're here is to take care of them.
Yeah. I guess I reject some part of your premises. I feel like you're pitching this as an either or. And I guess my premise is like, ¿por qué no los dos? Like, and I do understand that there might have to be like, physicians might not receive the same like pay increases. But I mean, you mentioned earlier that I think like a lot of, particularly like some of the procedural specialties, is like they're financially well off and it's okay. I guess it's like the question is like, why does it have to be a trade-off? Why can't we, allow the adoption of AI tools while also ensuring that, and those specialties might evolve. And yes, this is absolutely something that I haven't thought through the practicality of, but it's like, I don't think this has to be a competition of like physician jobs versus AI,
Well, I think that's
incorporation.
the financial, that's where the financial incentives come in that make it potentially a this or that situation.
And that's where I come back, and it's like, well, if you like actually like, again,
about it.
This is not a thing I've like thought through completely, but this is the thing where you come through and you're collectively like, hey, we're fine with you implementing AI, but we don't want there to be job loss in our hospital. And you do that collectively. You do that through like a bargaining and a contract. That is like a way that I could see this working out. Maybe not perfectly at first, but at least trying to protect both and in trying to increase patient care while also not like causing, a massive job loss.
So let's consider this question. I started to do that and then
got rudely interrupted.
Y'all no,
that's
I
on me,
mean,
Dave.
that's on me. I whispered
all right.
communist bullshit into the microphone.
So are there things that med students or pre-meds can do to sort of future-proof themselves if they want to get into medicine? If this whole idea of AI taking over medicine doesn't completely turn you off from going to med school and getting, going into massive debt, what should students focus on?
Are you ready for my big feelings on the? Yeah, you and I probably. I'll let
Let's
Sarah
go with
go.
Sarah.
Because
Sarah
you
does
haven't talked today.
Oh, I'm enjoying it. No, I would say, I don't know. My biggest thing is I would say that like, don't do it for the money then. Like, I know that they always say, don't go into medicine for the money. And I know that a lot of people have been saying that for a while, but I feel like based off of everything that we've just said, even more so going forward, do it because you love it, not because you're doing it for the money. That'd be my 2 cents.
Because I think Sarah and I come from a very similar background. We both took a long path. I think we were actually like technically in the same class in undergrad as well, where like both her and I took a very long path to get to med school, and just kind of putting all this AI stuff aside because
we can do that.
It stresses me the hell out.
Right,
I didn't expect to leave this episode more stressed than when I came in here.
Her OSCE is going to be really interesting.
Oh my gosh! I'm just going to start. I'm going to start crying, and I'm going to be like, "How are you going to take care of me?" Anywho, I think the biggest thing for pre-meds and anybody wanting to go into medicine and following that whole "don't go into it for the money" thing is explore other things. Explore yourself outside of medicine. Explore yourself outside of school. If today you found out you could never go into medicine, you could never practice medicine, you could never do any of that, do you have other things you enjoy in life? Do you have other pieces of who you are? Or is your sole identity school and going into medicine?
Okay.
Because there's another side to that. And it's not saying that that there aren't people out there who don't have the passion, but it's one of those, you need to still push to go into medicine because it's hard to get to, because you do love it. You love the journey. You love the content. You love working with the patients. But what's going to make you a better doctor if you're pushing through that is still knowing and having that other human side of you. Because otherwise we're no better than the robots that we're talking about replacing us. And that's what makes us unique from these AI bots, is having our human nature and who we are outside of medicine.
Well, that's one of the things that Dr. Carmody talks about in at the end of his videos, like what, and one of his observations was be more human. Do you want to talk more about that, Dr. Carmody?
Oh yeah, I mean, so I agree. Like I say, what is AI going to replace? It's going to replace the things that it can and the things that society will allow it to. So, what you want to do is within sort of the framework of what you want out of your career and what's fascinating to you and everything, you want to choose the opposite of those things. You want to choose to do the things that society is not going to allow AI to do. You want to choose the things and be good at the things that AI can't do well. And among those are the human skills.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just interacting with humans. It's, I mean, lots of people have bemoaned how, the physical exam is a lost art. But really, I mean, there are certain things that, your exam should be better than the scribe who's just sitting there and asking questions and feeding in what they observe to the chatbot. Right. You should add value if you're a physician. Like you should take a better history. Your observational skills should be better than other person who, I mean, nothing against them, but I mean, who lacks your training, but works at, a fourth of your rate, who's there feeding information to the bot. You should be better than them. And if you leave medical school without being better than them, you've done yourself a disservice.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say is you want to use AI judiciously.
Yes.
And what I mean is, one thing that I think, when people say, oh, how could AI replace doctors? I mean, doctors are so smart, doctors are so good. I mean, one of my fears is wait 5 years and see how smart we are. I mean, when our means of solving problems becomes, well, let me ask ChatGPT. I mean, how much is your brain worth then? And so, do not resist the temptation to turn to AI to do a lot of stuff that really you need to do yourself. I mean, like I said, it seems like a shortcut. I said this in the video, but it seems like a shortcut, to use AI, and your time is pinched in medical school. You got way more stuff to do than you got time for. But having AI do stuff for you, I mean, if you're not careful, it's like having AI go to the gym for you. You're not saving time. You're just shortcutting yourself. So resist that temptation. On the other hand, I think you need to know how to use AI. You know how to use it effectively, because there will be opportunities for physicians who know how to use AI, and you can bring that skill and be the doctor who's, to be frank, replacing someone else, rather than the replacement level doctor, And so having the skills to be poised, in the new business atmosphere that we're going to be in, that will be valuable.
I will say that I feel like I've added less value. I've perceived that I've added less value than the patient perceives when I'm doing a physical exam. Like I don't want to be like too flippant about it, but if I'm like listening to the heart and lungs and it's like, they're here for like knee pain, but we always listen to the heart and lungs, right? I've put my hands on the patient and they feel like, oh, I've given them something very special because of that. And so in their mind, this is now a special relationship, even though I'm not 100% sure that every single exam technique that I'm using on this patient is useful to them at all. Certainly I'm not billing for it, so I don't feel bad about it. But at the same time, like it has built the relationship up. There's a more of a camaraderie. There's more of a trust there. Even if it's just like we release a little bit of oxytocin because we're physically touching each other while we're in the office and we're like, okay, we're on the same team now. But that is something that, like you said, like, bot's never going to be able to do, some kind of like a knee exam or something like that. But more importantly, the bot can't physically touch the patient. And that's something that the patient perceives as really high in value, more than just the information that you're giving them. It's the human interaction that they genuinely want to be touched. We've been having a conversation about different forms of machine learning in medicine for 35 years or so with, EKGs and radiology and this kind of stuff. So while I do think some things are accelerating and it's really difficult to predict exponential growth, there are some limits to these, large language models and other forms of AI. I don't want anybody listening to think that, oh, I better not take the MCAT and go to medical school because this career is not going to exist in 5 years. This is not something that's going to happen tomorrow. This is something that's going to happen over the next, years, decades. Patients are going to need care in the meantime. So please come on in. The water's fine.
I have a listener question from Vexilin Moonquake. It's a pseudonym.
Wonderful.
She didn't ask me to choose it, but I felt like her question was sensitive enough that I should.
Aw.
She visited theshortcode.com/tell us to ask this question.
Which makes her a superstar.
She's a superstar.
Hi, everyone. Just wanted to start out by saying I love your podcast. I'm always listening while doing chores or when I need a break from the schoolwork.
Thanks.
I'm a pre-med student, and currently the plan is for me to graduate by the spring of next year. The issue with this is my mental health. I've been trying to get treatment through my school where I can, but due to familial opinions and my lack of a driver's license and money LOL, I've had to be a bit low-key about it. My parents, who will be mainly paying for my tuition next to loans, want and expect me to take the MCAT and apply for medical school right after graduation. But I feel as though I should take a gap year not only to strengthen my resume with volunteering and shadowing opportunities, but to find ways to better manage my mental health. Without that gap year, I basically have the rest of this summer, the fall, and maybe a quarter of next year to try and make up for 2 years worth of shadowing, volunteering hours, or anything else I may need to strengthen my medical school applications. Should I take that gap year? Or should I do what my parents want?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Always
Hang
take
on,
the
hang-
gap year.
Yeah, my knee-jerk reaction to this definitely is take the gap year. Not necessarily even for like your specific situation, but just in general. Like,
We love a good gap year.
yeah, like especially if you think that there's stuff on your resume that could use strengthening. Like I think the main issue that I think needs to be considered whenever you're thinking of taking a gap year is how are you going to pay for this? Because it is possible that one of the reasons your parents want you to get to med school is like, hey, we've only got like so much money to like keep you alive through your med school years. So like another year on top of that is now if you get like a paid post-bac position, that might help.
Or a job.
Or a job, but you know,
Jobs are cool.
But jobs also
Get a
don't leave
job.
you that much time to like, depending on what you do, might not leave you that much time to get like the other stuff done you need for your resume.
Yeah.
So like depending on how you can make that money, I do think that a gap year is always advantageous.
But how do we feel about the mental health question?
I mean, if you're not feeling ready for medical school, don't go to medical school. Like,
Well, I mean,
I shouldn't say that.
I want
shouldn't
to
say
say, I want to say, okay, so Dr. Carmody, I want you to weigh
Yes.
in on this. You're an actual doctor.
I have many
you know,
thoughts.
we're not giving medical advice here, but we are.
Yeah.
I think we can sort of make some general assumptions about the advisability of going into medical school when you don't have your
ducks in a row.
Yeah, your feet under you. Yeah, no, I agree. There's multiple points to make here. The several were already made. That's an excellent point. If you're asking this question, probably the reason. You probably should take it. I mean, you need to have your feet under you. And I'm going to say that, and this is not to scare anyone, but because of some of the stuff that I talk about, and I get to hear from people who have had a bad time in medical school. I get to hear from people who get kicked out of medical school. And if you get into medical school and you get dismissed, you might be able to go to school at sort of a lower tier. I mean, like if you're going to school in the United States, you might be able to go to a Caribbean medical school or something. But I mean, it's the kiss of death. It's sort of a one-shot deal. And, for most people. So that's one reason. I mean, number two is that, I got a little gray hair now. I went straight through from college to medical school. I considered doing a certain thing for a couple of years. I ended up doing it. If I had done that, I mean, would my life now be different in any significant, appreciable way? Not really. I mean, every year seems huge when you're in college and high school, and it is. I mean, every year is different than the one before. But sometime you're going to become someone like me, where your job is really sort of the same. And if you love it, that's great. But, would an extra year or two have made any difference to me now? Not really, Yeah. And then the third thing is that, the goal is not necessarily, to go to medical school or to become a doctor or to do any other thing. The goal is to, have a job where you're a blessing to the world and your job is a blessing to you, really. I mean, that's the goal. And if you need to get your feet under you from a mental health standpoint, I would absolutely do it. Because if you push through and maybe you make it through medical school, and maybe you everything's fine and you're where you want to be in life, a year sooner, but you suffer while doing that, I don't think that's a win. I mean, it's your life. Like I say, you want to get to, I mean, not that you have to be like me, but I mean, I am at the end of that journey, and I got a good job, I got to say. So, and if you got a good job and you enjoy it and, like I say, you're a blessing to the world and your job is a blessing to you, then you've won. But that's really the goal. It's not any of these intermediaries for that. So I say take a gap year.
I absolutely love that. I guess if we're offering advice to our listener, one of my questions I had upon hearing this is what is the reasoning behind your parents' desire for you to go straight into medical school? Like, are they worried about finances? Or like, for example, my parents have sometimes been like uncomfortable with decisions I've made in like my PhD, because they just think like, is this going to be harmful to your career? Like maybe when they were growing up, like, oh, taking a gap year, it's like, it shows that you're like not responsible. So like, where are your parents coming from with this objection, and then that could help, like having that conversation might help alleviate some of this. Or do they just want it to be like, get out of the house, which, you could also alleviate their fear by doing that. So yeah, I mean, like I said,
Yes.
go get a job and then like problem solved. But, that's one of my questions is just like, where are your parents coming from in their desire? Because at the end of the day, Dr. Carmody, you're absolutely right. Like, it's your life and you need to live it the way that it's going to make you the happiest.
I always talk about managing parental expectations. You gotta at some point as the child of people who love you, sometimes, well, all the time at the end of your childhood, you need to like just basically tell your parents, okay, thank you. I'm going to go do my shit now. I'm going to go do my thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But the other thing I wanted to say about this question was med school is not going to make you mentally healthier.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No.
It doesn't do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It really doesn't. And so I think that's the biggest reason to get your mental health lined up is, as Dr. Carmody said, like this is a long haul that you're in for, and it's better if you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And don't waste your money. Like that's the biggest thing is like,
Yes.
if you are
That's the
saying,
scariest part,
like,
actually.
oh, my parents want me to take the MCAT. Do not waste the $500 it's going to take. Don't waste the $2,000 you're going to spend on a Kaplan prep course and still
Yeah.
probably not do very well on. Don't do it. If you're not ready, do not let anyone make you feel obligated to take it. That is my
That's
my advice.
very good
Take
point.
the gap
Yes.
year. Take 4 gap years.
And it's like, even with the
Get a
like
different
money
degree.
thing, so what if you end up working as a waitress or in food service for a year or two?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
You're
as
going to
long
learn
as-
some important stuff.
It's good. I was
Exactly.
going to say, learn how to be take a year, take
Yeah.
4 years, learn how to be an adult.
Mhm.
I can tell you will start medical school a lot
Yes.
better off,
Yes.
in my opinion.
I'm going to disagree with everybody.
Of
Oh,
course.
Jesus.
What?
It's
You,
in my
Jeff?
nature. So as somebody who took a few gap years, I have an 8-year-old. So I am going into my 4th year of medical school next week. And so far I have worked with one resident older than me. All of the other residents that I've worked with as a medical student have been younger than me. And it's really fun because they don't know how to evaluate somebody who has a kid.
Yeah.
So they're like, you're more of an adult than I am. So I took several gap years and I did it for family reasons, and I don't regret that at all because I love my children. But I don't necessarily think that I don't think it's necessary. But I do think that it's not inherently necessary, but it can be helpful. So you're already technically going to get a gap year if you graduate and then you take the MCAT. You're already going to have a year off to be doing other things, including working on your mental health while you're working on your app and your interviews. Otherwise, you're just kind of hanging out. And I think that that's reasonable. If that's not enough, by all means, take the advice of everybody else in the room. I agree. You're the only one that's going to know how much time you need to get your feet underneath you. If you need more time, take it. If you're prepping for the MCAT and you're like, you know what, actually, I need to push this off 6 months, or I need to push this off 12 months, and I just need to take 6 months and just, go to Europe or whatever so I can really reset myself, or go to therapy and really reset myself. Do that. But don't feel like I don't feel like you necessarily need a gap year in order to get your feet underneath you. In fact, for me, my mental health improved once I got back on track and started coming back into medical school. Embarrassingly for me, it was because I tied my identity too much with wanting to succeed in medicine because I wanted to be a doctor so bad. So I was like, I felt like I'm taking care of my family, I'm feeding them, but I feel like I'm off track on what I want to do with my life. And so my mental health suffered because I took more time off.
I guess it depends
So
on what
everybody's-
your
everybody's a little bit different on that,
situation
right?
is.
So
right?
but
It also doesn't sound like you disagree with everyone in the room. Like, I think if this person were feeling like the time that they had to prepare for medical school was enough where they're at right now, they probably wouldn't be asking the question. The question was like, should I do what my parents want to do or should I do what I want to do? And I think you're answering that question of like, yeah, you should do what feels right for you.
Yeah, but I feel very strongly that I don't know that a gap year really adds a lot of value, is what I'm saying.
That's
if you need it for your mental health, take it. I'm all for that. But I don't think that it's inherently valuable. Some people feel like it's become more and more of a trend that like I take a gap year because it's going to make my resume stand out more. I'm going to grow as a person. Maybe not.
Yeah.
I don't think that you're inherently better because you took a gap year. You're not a better applicant. You're not more of an adult because you took a gap year.
Mhm.
You grow when you intentionally choose to do the things that will help you grow. If that's getting a job, great. If that's going straight into medical school, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Another thing that you should definitely take into consideration if money is an issue with you and your family is certain legislation is certainly changing how we're looking at funding medical school going forward. That might be something worth looking at when you're thinking about how much time you want to take off here and there. It might affect some decisions, especially if your parents are involved. I'm not a financial advisor, I'm not a financial planner, but I would recommend looking into that.
The Short Code Podcast does not give financial advice. This is not a financial or legal advice podcast.
Yeah. Well, you make fine points,
Yeah.
all of you.
So
You all made fine points today. Good job.
what are you, a
Go
debate
team.
moderator?
What a fantastic group.
It's like the most dad thing ever. So I just appreciate that.
I
What
am-
a fun group of
I
people.
am what I am. That's our show, Dr. Carmody. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank you.
Happy to do it anytime.
And thanks again, Jeff, for organizing today's show.
Happy to do it.
Miranda, Sarah, Taryn, my thanks to you two for hanging out with me today.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
And what kind of absolute pudding would I be if I didn't thank you, Short Coats, for making us a part of your week?
Like a gross vanilla pudding.
If you're new here and you like what you heard today, follow the show wherever fine podcasts are available. The show is made possible by generous donation by Carver College of Medicine, student government, and ongoing support from the Writing and Humanities program. Our music is by Dr. Vox and Catmosphere. I'm Dave Etler saying don't let the bastards get you down. Don't do it.
Don't do it.
Talk to you in 1 week. Hi, Short Coats. Look, life in medical education, life in America, life in the world is often difficult. And I often wish I could help. All I have is this podcast, but in my wildest dreams, you have the support you need to lead a life of your choosing. You deserve to be happy, healthy, and successful in whatever ways you define those words. So if you need support because you've experienced racism, discrimination, harassment, mental health crises, I want you to be able to get the help that you need. And so I'm going to put some links in the show notes to some resources that you can use. But the bottom line is that for what it's worth, I see you. I know you're out there. I wish I could do more. Maybe I can in ways that I don't understand yet or know about. But I see you, and I'm glad you're here, and other people are too. This Short Code podcast is a proud member of the MedEd Media Network. Inspiration, information, and guidance on your journey to medical school and beyond at mededmedia.com.